Managing Violence Podcast, Season 4, Episode 3, Lee Morrison of Urban Combatives. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Managing Violence Podcast. I am pumped for this one. I've been wanting to get Lee Morrison on this show since this very started, since the beginning. I've been wanting to do this for 18 months. Lee is an intense individual. He's a legend of the game. He calls it as it is. He's great fun to chat to, even better to learn from. Look, if you know who Lee Morrison is, you don't need to listen to me talk about it. If you don't, listen to the interview. Go check out all his YouTube stuff, buy his books. He's the man. Anyway, it's going to be a great conversation, and I'm going to dive right into it. But just quickly, a couple of announcements. Just a reminder, there is bonus content each and every show on our Patreon, patreon.com/managing violence. If you sign up to be a contributor, you can get a whole bunch of perks, including written summaries, as well as bonus content, bonus audio content, whole bunch of stuff, early access to the episodes. Cool stuff. Check it out. Also, don't forget to check out our Facebook group, the Managing Violence Tribe. It's full of great conversation. There are some amazing individuals participating in that group. You will really enjoy it. For my money, one of the best martial arts, self-defense, violence management groups going on social media today, although I might be a little bit biased. Also, if you are listening to this when it comes out in a couple of days or possibly even tomorrow, Jim Armstrong is going to be hosting a seminar in Melbourne, a bare bones combatives power generation seminar at his gym in Melbourne. I highly recommend you check it out. I'm going to be there live. I'm going to be streaming some video. We're going to be doing some recording. We're going to be doing some bonus content. We're going to be doing some stuff for YouTube. So if you're around, come check it out. All right, I'm about to pay some bills, and straight after that, Mr. Lee Morrison. This episode is brought to you by R2S Academy. If you're after premium e-learning courses in topics such as occupational violence prevention, security and safety awareness, behavioral observation and suspicious activity recognition, active armed offender management, fire safety and evacuation, stressful situation response, resilience building, and, so many more. Check out the full range of pre-built courses at www.r2s.academy. But that's not all. R2S Academy are learning design specialists and have built tailored risk, security, and emergency courses for companies and government entities in Australia and around the world. For more information, check out www.r2s.academy. And if you'd like 10% off your purchase, enter the coupon code JOEMVP. That's JOEMVP. Check it out now. www.r2s.academy. All right, Lee, thanks for joining me on the podcast, mate. It is a tremendous honor to have you on. You've been a guest I've been trying or wanting to get on since season 1, and you've probably the most requested guest I haven't been able to land up until this point. So I'm pretty excited that we finally managed to make it happen.
Oh, glad to be here, mate. Appreciate you having me on. That's very nice that I've been requested before. I wouldn't have thought so, but that's great.
You've actually got quite a big underground following. There's quite a few muteers out there that love them some Lee Morrison.
Oh, well, that's good. I hope they get something from it all.
I'm sure they will.
Good.
Lee, for those that don't know you, that don't know much about you, or haven't heard about you before, you've got a hell of a story about growing up in martial arts and so on. So, can I give you the floor and just walk us through, like, how does Lee Morrison come into this world of martial arts and violence?
All right. Well, when I leave this business, I intend to leave it with an autobiography that will be extremely candid. And it will probably cover elements that I'll just touch on here in a lot more honesty and depth. And when somebody actually reads that, they'll probably read it and think, fuck me, that makes sense, particularly if they know me. But basically, I left home in school when I was 12 years old. I lived during an era where abuse towards children was fucking rife, and there was no child line, no one give a fuck, and there was lots of turmoil in the houses at home. So it was just my old lady. My old lady had 4 kids to 4 different men, none of which were my dad. none of which that I knew. All went their separate ways. She was very irate and highly strung, and we never had a home of our own as such. So my mum used to do this residential living SRN type nurse work, and at that time you would do it residential, so she would get a place and then work, and then I would go to school and so on. But because she couldn't keep a fucking job because of her mentality, I ended up going to about 13 different schools as a kid, pushed around from one place to the other.
Wow.
Every school, I'm the new kid, I've got no siblings, I'm quite quiet and withdrawn, so I'm a target for bullying, and I was going through an abusive childhood. Eventually, anyway, it came to a head. About 12 years old, I just fucking left. I ran from home, and I ran with some street kids. Ended up in a gang. Ended up robbing to eat, doing what you got to do, etc. And then fasting forward a little bit more, 17. I'd been involved in gangs for a significant period of time, and also started having an introduction to football violence. I met my first wife, and at 17 I had my first son. So she was older than me. My oldest son is Dan. I've got 6 children. He's 33, 34 coming up now. So I had a kid very young, and she was from a staunch Irish Catholic family, and her parents forbid her to see me. So I lost her and I lost the kid. I kind of went off the rails for a bit, and I got involved in various things. Anyway, 18 months later, approaching my 18th birthday, 19th birthday, we got back together and we moved away from London. And I took a job on a building site, and then I started my term on the doors, 19. And from there it went on. So my upbringing was very disruptive. I left school with no qualifications, self-educated. So considering all that, I'd done pretty well. But what I had done all that time was, from the age of 11, I started martial arts, and at that time it was traditional martial arts, Japanese karate, etc. My actual beginning began, I got on a bus. I was going to Lewisham in South East London, and I found a copy of Kung Fu Monthly, which was then a poster magazine of Bruce Lee. It was a Bruce Lee poster magazine, and I've never seen it before. And I saw it, and I was just fucking gobsmacked looking at this magazine. Thought, fuck me, but you don't get the life I get. Wanted to be like that, etc. And sought out martial arts. And within 6 weeks, I found the first club I ever went to, which was the Budokai in Gilston Road, South Kensington, which is a legendary judo place.
That's a very good place to accidentally end up for your first club.
Yeah, so I started with judo, and then a week later I started karate, and I worked both villagely for the next 7 years. Anyway, so I started at 11. Traditional martial arts is all there was. And by about 15, I went to other stuff, found boxing, found some Thai. And I stayed with martial arts all my life, predominantly traditional for the first 7 years, and never, ever, ever stopped training other than injury. And even when I had injury, I would set aside periods of visualization where I visualized training. So it was my life. So it was the one thing that kept me on the straight and narrow in a bad environment. So I was in an environment where nothing good was going to happen. I was going to either hurt somebody bad, I was going to get hurt, I was going to go to prison. So meeting my first wife, and her coming back to me after 18 months because she couldn't stand the staunch Catholic upbringing of her parents, she decided that we ran away together and we raised our son together the way we should have. So we did. And it kind of put me back on the straight and narrow, if you like. And anyway, during that time, I took 2 jobs, started on the doors, stayed on the doors for 14 years. Within the first 3 months of working on the doors, I realised it was a fucking training laboratory. I realised that a lot of what you'd been told to work was fucking bollocks. And, that many physical things could work in terms of the actual skill sets, regardless of where the punch comes from, if you were sneaky, tactical and preemptive. So I started to learn that strategy and tactics were more important than skill set, necessarily. And then, so where are we now? Yeah, I continued my martial training, if you like, all the way through. Just looked at everything: Japanese, Okinawan, Filipino, Thai, Indonesian, anything I could get my hands on, including Western arts. And I learned a lot, and I become pretty skilled. But I've got to say, I knew all the way through that learning that the missing link was psychological element. They never talked about how you'd feel. They never talked about access and aggression. I didn't know it as access and aggression then, or becoming angry, aggressive to fight. They never told you about the predominantly pre-cue threat behaviour that you get from criminality, the deception, the immediacy, the brutalness. They just never mentioned any of that. So I always knew the two were separate. I always knew real violence was one thing, and being Bruce Lee is another. And I just pictured this as, well, if you get enough of this experience of learning the physical stuff and you become really fucking good, then you'll be able to handle that. But it doesn't cross over because it's not mentioned. And it wasn't until the 90s when who I consider to be the grandfather of modern day reality-based self-protection, Jeff Thompson, started writing his book and coming out with the no fear concept and the 3-second firing, the preemption, and everything else. I read his book. His books were originally in 3 separate books, and I had to watch my back one, and I read them, and I liked it so much I got in touch with him. I found him. And we were kindred spirits, really. We were both gone through a similar experience. And he come to the similar conclusion that I did before me, because he's like, a decade older. And I was saying, why is nobody talking about this? He was saying, you say to your mate, when we kicks off, fuck me, mate, I feel scared. Scared as fuck. I really have to get a handle on that. Do you get that? And I used to say that to people in like football or games or whatever else. And they look at you and they laugh and they go, nah, it's just you. You think it was just you as a youngster because you don't know any different, but really they're just not being honest. And but although I used to feel it, I used to feel that it had a massive potential power, because I felt a lot of times that I could use it quite naturally, as opposed to it being derogatory to me and making me capitulate. I found that I could actually use it, and I guess a lot of that comes from upbringing. I mean, I learned what pre-threat cues were. If you use facial expressions, so you have pre-threat cues, and you're face to face with somebody, if they shifted body weight, let's say, or a hand obscured, or they looked over at something, glanced at that fire extinguisher on the wall there to put around your head, that's a kind of a gross cue. But you get micro cues. You get micro cues in somebody's face, so jaw tightening, eyes narrowing, little furrow of the forehead, like playing forward slightly, just a facial for something will change. And I knew that shit well, because I'll be sat at the dinner table, maybe I'm eating too fast, and then I'll see an expression change on my old lady's face, and the next thing I get a punch in the lips. So it was that kind of life. So I learned to figure things out. She was an alcoholic. She used a string of real drunken bastards that used to beat her and beat me. And I'd hear the door slam, and I'd think, "Fuck, is that the wind? Or is she drunk? Is she drunk again?" So I knew what it was like to be fit. And I knew what pre-threat behaviour was like. I knew what it was like to tenderfoot around the animal kind of thing. And that translated big time through my gang career, through the relationship with people that rub shoulders with football hooligans, let's say. And all my time on the door, I knew the game. And I knew the feeling, so I was desensitized to it. And I would wait till it would rise in me, and then I would use it. But on the doors, I had to learn to be more careful with that. I had to make sure that I had criteria to be preemptive. And the majority of times you have to restrain instead of like strike. Whereas early days, I just fucking hit everything that moved. So, I eventually started weight training at 19 as well. I was part of some weight for the doors, and then I become competitive in Olympic lifting. And Olympic lifting, only amateur level, but made me very explosive. And apparently
that actually explains a little bit. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. That's actually something I didn't know about you until I was doing research on you for this particular interview. I didn't realize you had an Olympic lifting background, which explains so much, because it's one of those things. I remember watching a DVD set of yours 13, 14, 15 years ago, something like that. And I thought, man, this guy's explosive. Like it just didn't, I don't know, just your speed of movement and your control of movement was incredible. But when I read,
I can do it from anywhere, no wind up, any limb as well.
Yeah,
and I can still do it at 52. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, but anyway, so that gave me the exposure. When I found out later, when I got with a sports scientist, and I found out that without doing a biopsy, he said that I have a very high propensity of type 2B fast twitch fibers packed into my my body type. So a genetic predisposition as well. I guess my old man, whoever he was a bit of an athlete.
Well,
Apparently, I heard he was
gave
a
you something.
semi-professional rugby player. So, kind of maybe. Who knows? But do you want me to continue? Or?
Oh, well, actually, let's. I've got some questions.
Because I could go on and on with that. I really don't want to, but let me tie that up for you quickly.
Sure.
Right? But basically, all those experiences put together, along with training with some of the best people on the planet, because this is what I lived for. I just would train with people. The accumulation of the experience and the skill and rubbing shoulders with people, and people that I fought in the street, and people that I had to deal with in clubs, they gave me the educational part that I needed for teaching self-protection. They had the essentials. People that had never stepped in a dojo in their life, those that knew the street game. So I came from that background, as well as immersed myself in martial arts. So by the time I got to the period in martial training where I was, considered significantly good, I also had an additional understanding of reality compared to people at a similar level to me. A lot of people at a high level in self-protection or even in martial arts have not necessarily experienced real violence. Having a tear up in a pub is not really it, but they base their conclusions a lot on what they think they could do when shit and fan meet, and that tells me a lot that they've never been there. But people really hire me for a couple of things. They don't hire me to fly me fucking 10,000 miles around the world to teach you how to throw a palm strike. They teach you how to throw. They want me to fly me there to teach you how to throw a palm strike with fucking hurt and hate. How you can access emotional content, how you find that shit, how you can control fear, and how you understand the animal. I mean, most things that work in the street come from criminality. So you need to model criminality to a degree, and to a big degree, I do. I just make sure that it's morally, ethically, and legally justified where I would use it. But so the combination of both really accumulated to what you see now. And that's and I come to a crossroads in my life where I decided I need to do something to get myself out of the bad situations that I'm in, or I'm going to go to prison, or I'm going to die, or I'm going to kill some fucker. So that's how my life was during my sort of mid-20s. So I did a complete turnaround. I moved away. I raised my son. I worked. I just trained, and I focused on building a curriculum. Initially, I didn't want to teach, got to be honest. I only started getting a class of people together because I wanted meat puppets. I wanted fodder, and I was honest about that.
Yeah.
Back then, we were doing Jeff Thompson's Animal Day type training, but we were taking it more into a scenario context where it'd start from dialogue and a bar fight, and then we'd just kick off. And we were really pressuring it out. Nobody got killed. I don't fucking know, early days. But eventually, 3 people become 10 people. And then I realized, I need a curriculum. I need to map this out. We need to work the fundamentals. We can't just tear it up. And then when I started doing that, and I was going to seminars, all over the place. And one of my instructors was Pete Robbins, and I was Dennis Martin, many, many great people. And they would see something in me, and they would ask me to teach and present. And before I know it, I'm presenting on an international seminar circuit when I'd really just gone there to train. But what that gave me is a realization that I can actually do this. There's many things in my life I can't do. There's shitloads of things that I'm shit at. There's loads of women from ex-relationships that will tell you relationships is one. There's loads of things. Business, you name it. Right, I'm getting better and better at things. But one thing that I own is this. I was born to do what I do, and I just love it, and I do it with passion, and I think that's the reason, or the difference that makes a difference potentially.
100% agree. If just go back to you're out on the street, but you continued training. I'm just really interested in that mindset. I mean, you hadn't been training all that long, but you still made the effort to continue training, even though you had no stability at home in that situation. So, what was it that made you that, or even I guess allowed you to make that decision?
Right. What allowed me to make sure that I turned up at Marshall Street 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoon, so I was a lunchtime trainer, was I had to get £3.50 to train. That's how much I needed. And back then, I was struggling for money. There was a lot of scams going on. My old lady taught me how to get by in life. Let's put it that way. At that time, you could be in a bed and breakfast place, but living somewhere else, but have a social security claim that paid the Diro check every year. There were scams. Do you know what I'm saying? And everyone knew people that would I don't know, sell Moody gear, whatever else. So you would get money, you'd make money. So what it cost me to train was affordable. And on the times I couldn't get to my dojo, I'd be training in the bathroom, training in a garden. I'd be doing whatever. In fact, the majority of probably my early day martial training was solo training.
It's impressive for a young kid.
But what I had in abundance was imagination. So you imagine a kid that had no siblings, that used to get the shit kicked out of him, thrown in a room, might not eat for a couple of days, just had to immerse himself into himself. And the only thing I could do well was read. I used to read books. So I left school when I was 12 with no education, no qualifications, but I was an avid reader. So I could read and I could use language naturally as a youngster. I could gift of the gab, if you like, talk the knickers up and down. And I had the ability to chat and use vast vocabulary, more than most people probably of that era. You asked me to do a mathematical equation or work out something scientific, I wouldn't have had a prayer. But reading allowed me to write, because I have it allowed me to conjure imagination. So I learned very early that visualization, performance enhances performance. I didn't really know how to do it properly until I got older, but I remember reading a book, American Karate by Chuck Norris, an O'Hara publication, I think it was, and he was talking about how he visualized before he fought his opponent, and he visualized every possible scenario. So I used to visualize a lot. So as an example, I had an operation as a kid for a hernia, and I was out for about 3 months, and it drove me crazy because I wanted to train, and every day I visualized. So I would visualize and then do and then train and then go to the club. So one way or another, I always kept it. I never allowed it to leave me. It was part of my life.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Actually, you just answered one of my follow-up questions. I was intrigued by how someone who leaves school at the age of 12 writes such good books, because your books are always very well written, and they're very well researched as well, which is unusual in this space.
Well, they're well researched because if I'm into something, I immerse. I absolutely immerse, and I have to know. I have to eat, sleep, and drink it. So I immerse, and then I'll immerse until I find discrepancies where that doesn't mix with what that person said, and that doesn't mix with what that person said, and then I'll look further. So I look at it from 3 perspectives. I look at it from the person who's saying one thing, thank you, the person who's saying something else, and then I'll come out as a neutral observer and look at both points of view. And I would be very much like that, would analyse stuff. And I know from writing books, I've wrote lots of books. The person that actually prompted me to write books, 2 people. One was a guy called David Gentle, who used to write for Muscle and Fitness magazine. He was a bodybuilding NABA judge, was at Arnold Schwarzenegger's wedding, knew all the bodybuilders, but he wrote for Physical Culture for 40 years, and he was a friend of mine when I was younger. And he bought me my first typewriter and sort of taught me how to one-finger type, which is funny because I've written 23 books, all one-finger typing. Literally. But the first one I wrote, obviously there's grammatical mistakes and there'll be spelling mistakes because early books never got proofread, so you can see that I'm not fucking totally meant to IQ A-level English, but I write it. Jeff Thompson said to me, always write a book or teach like talking to a 12-year-old, and they'll get it. So I keep it as layman as I can, basically. And it just feels like a natural thing to do. I can write for 5-6 hours at a time on the computer, or I can go to sit and write, and I can't write 2 words. You get that block. So it's an emotional thing. I have to be in the right mental state.
One thing that I really want to ask you about. So, your background obviously explains the way that you're able to tap into that real feral emotion of combat, and it's one of the things that, again, when I first saw your material, it it made you stand out to me, because I think at that time I was binge watching a whole bunch of stuff. I had Peyton Quinn stuff, I had Mark McYoung stuff, I had a lot of guys. I had just finished Jeff Thompson's material and Peter Constantine's, and so
Some of the good early people, eh?
yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, I mean, this was early 2000s, so I mean, there wasn't as much. I mean, there's still more.
Oh no, I'm with you. I mean, my UC started in 1999, and that's when it was spawned, and that was obviously, you look 5 years before that was the research period, so it was thin on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. It hadn't been commercialized.
I mean, in the 90s, all you had was Jeff Thompson in the UK, and then you had what's his face, that other matey in Jim Wagner in the US. Yep. And that's all there was.
Yeah.
But really, they encouraged me to look at the old text, like the text of Fairbairn, and the research the World War II period. And that's when everything really changed for me in terms of self-protection.
Yeah. Yeah. So just coming back to...
I went that way. Before that, I was more reality-based self-defense stroke martial art. And but when I met the Combatives, that's when I went in the right direction.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought made you stand out compared to some of those contemporaries from that era was that you could tell that you were from the street. I mean, everything you did was real. It wasn't. It's not a martial artist who's just taken off the gi top and putting on a singlet, and now he's a reality.
Well, that was what I was saying earlier. So there's many people that I respect in this business that have been in it a long time that haven't been there, but do exactly that. They take off the martial art gi and then talk like they know the street, and I can tell they don't. And anyone that knows the street can tell they don't. Because if they've been there, they wouldn't talk that way.
I mean, there's no one's ever watched a Lee Morrison clip and gone, this guy isn't the real deal. So my question...
That's one thing I don't think they can say. They can say as much as they want. But, it's very difficult to be a charlatan in this business because you'll get found out. Somewhere and someone somewhere will talk shit about you, particularly when there's cunts out there that fucking hate you because they think they're the top shit, because they're complete narcissists and they can't believe that anyone else could be on par with them, even though the left side of their brain knows they're full of shit and the right side of their brain thinks they are what they are. You get people like that in this business, mentioning no names, that diss me, but one thing they can never diss me about is what I come from. Because you could do your fucking research, I live in Southampton, a small place, Southampton. Before that, I was in Portsmouth. Before that, I could show you the boroughs of London that I was in, where I worked the doors. Everyone there still knows me. I'll give you an accurate account. If you can find people from my youth, they'll give you an accurate account. And if there's any old instructors alive still that taught me in the early days, they could give you an accurate account. So I'm trackable, I say it as I see it, and that sometimes makes me unpopular.
Given that ability that you have to tap into that, I'm curious how you went about when you started teaching. So you transitioned from someone who's just training for the love of it, for the enjoyment of it, and for also just obviously for your own self-protection while you're working, to teaching. And now you're teaching people that have come from a nice, stable, middle-class upbringing that don't or never accessed that part of their psyche before.
Snowflake.
Can you talk about how you go about doing that? How do you help them access
Well, I'll tell you how it happened initially. So when you're teaching a bunch of lads that you know, it's easy. So we started off teaching a bunch of lads that I know, and then they brought a few lads along. Where it turned was one of these lads got me my first TV slot, and it was a thing on Bravo, something Warriors it was called. And I got a 10-minute segment, and it showed the very early days of what I did. And when I was doing that under the camera, I become, for some reason, extremely nervous because I've never been in front of a camera before. And I'm thinking, fuck, how am I going to do this? And then I just went, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do it like I'm just teaching a class, all right? So I'm going to ignore you. And she went, yeah, that's fine if that works. And that's exactly how I did it, and it worked really well. And then I realised, that was all right. And fast forward many TV appearances later, when I'm stood in the Crucible, when Kelly McCann had it, who is my top here, and stood there in front of a guy called Peter Lund, who owned Paladin Publications. I think he's gone now. and real brash American ex-Marine. And I've got about 20 Marines stood up above me on like a canopy looking down onto the film set in the Crucible gym. And I've got two young fucking high-level Marines, 22 years old each. You're thinking, what's this old man going to show me? And he goes to me, "Are you ready, son?" And I went, "I'm born ready, Pop." And that's exactly how I felt. I was born to do this. Couldn't wait to show them the shit. So I thought to myself, you really do shapeshift over years, you know, compared to that first time in front of that thing for that Bravo TV program when I was shitting it, right through to being where I was with Kelly McCann and the Paladin crew and feeling, yes, not only am I ready, I can't wait to show you what transitioned in between that to make me able to do this. And the only thing I can say is that I found my vocation. It was never hard. From the first time I actually talked publicly in a seminar, once I got over the nerves, because I used to feel a bit adrenalized almost to the point where I'd heave, that passed quick. As soon as I'd start, it was great. And then I just looked forward to it. And now I just don't even think, I've not even thought about it for 15 years. I just do it. So it was a natural thing. Maybe it's communication. I think I'm a good communicator. I mean, if you work with a large group of people, you've got to teach them from three perspectives: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, VAC model, right, which comes from an LP. You show them, you explain, you get them hands-on to do. Now you're going to hit everybody's learning curve. If you work privately with somebody and you know them, through conversation, verbal predicates, whatever else, as you're talking to them, you can kind of pick up how they see the world best in terms of internal representation. You can tell someone's visual, if they're more of a thinker, they're auditory, or they like to just get on with it and do it. You know, you can tell. And once you can tell the kind of learning curve they have, you can use that and tap in and get rapport and get real good communication going. The better you can communicate with somebody, the more fussy you can install a skill set. Simple as that. And I think it's just something I do naturally, because I was a very good communicator on the door as well. I mean, in my opinion, doormen are probably the best communicators out there, particularly the old school generation. Not so much now, but the old school generation. Absolutely. So I think linguistics and learning to use language is a big part of
it. It's a completely underrated skill set too. I know that working on the doors taught me a hell of a lot about communication. I thought I was a good communicator before that, but suddenly the consequences of not communicating well are quite real, and you soon figure it out. And it's. Yeah,
I mean, 55% is non-verbal, so you need to be able to know body language.
Exactly. No one cares what you're actually saying. It's about what it looks like. And
I mean, everybody communicates by text and email these days, which is bollocks, because you're getting 77% of the overall communication. You're getting words. That's it. You don't know what tone of voice they were said in, what speed, what volume. You know, you don't know what was said, and you can't see any facial expressions or body language. So people don't communicate properly anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Be interested to get your thoughts on if you had someone who wanted to engage you for private training for a short period of time. Let's say they wanted to spend 3 days with you. They've never trained before in their life. They've got no situational awareness. They've got no idea about personal safety, but maybe they're about to travel into an unsafe area and they want to engage you to get them ready. What percentage of that training do you think should be physical, or how would you prioritize what you're going to teach them over that period of time?
The way I teach anyway is self-protection is made up of 3 elements. The first element is the most important element, and that's what you call street smarts, personal security. Majority of that is non-physical. I'd spend the majority of time on that, depending on a person's demeanor. So if they're a little pretty switched on type of character anyway, then I'd still focus on it and then look at the physical. But if they're like, the majority of people that you see today that are, really too much of a soft life, too much of an easy upbringing, they don't know anything really. Snowflake-ish. I'm not being judgmental, but let's face it, men aren't men anymore. And if I've got that kind of person, then I'm going to spend the entire fucking time with him on trying to make him more street smart. And what comes into street smarts obviously is awareness, situational environment awareness. but also self-awareness. Be aware of yourself, what your capabilities. Emotionally, are you a snowflake? Can you stand up? Have you got a backbone? Can you access aggression? Not. Be honest about yourself. What is really your capabilities going to be in terms of doing any of the physical if you're going to be a common animal? And I'd focus on fixing that. How do I make you give you a better, more confident body language profile? Make you somewhat of a harder target. Just to get you walking at a brisk pace, confident gait, straight spine, making eye contact, not being frightened to smile at people or communicate. Says a lot about you. Your outward representation to the world is everything. If you're scrutinized by a criminal on the street, you're under the predatory optic, and they're looking for three things. They're looking first for some kind of weakness. That could be physical, a limp or something like that, impairment, or it could be emotional, where somebody just doesn't look fucking confident and they walk small, please don't notice me. That's the first thing they look for. Second thing, are you switched on? You got any attention in the environment? Are you living inside your head or outside your head? And finally, are you alone? If you tick all three of those boxes, then you let off food. If you let off food, you get fucking eaten. Simple as that. So I would work a lot on personal security, and that would include awareness, pre-threat cue recognition, knowing what to look for, cultivating a confident body language profile, learning to use your voice assertively if at all possible for verbal de-escalation, understanding proxemics, situational control, controlling personal space, appearing to be extremely, unobtrusive, non-aggressive, working from a non-violent posture, being aware that anything you do in a physical sense, Big Brother's watching, and what you're seen doing and heard saying can affect the outcome post-event. So I would work quite a lot on that, soft skills. Personal security is the first element of self-protection. The next two elements of self-protection are both physical. And this is where the saying comes in, you can be the hammer or the fucking anvil. The best employment for any use of force is if you are proactive. You do something before they do something. Have them reacting to you right from the very off. And outside of that, the third dynamic, because preemption is not always possible, is what I would call counter-offense. I wouldn't call it defense. Counter-offense is so offensive dynamic is where I go first. Me, more, and me. Finished. Got it?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
Right. A counter-offensive dynamic is I made a mistake. I missed a pre-threat cue. You jumped the gun, or maybe you hit it. Maybe you distracted me, misdirected me. Maybe you just got me fucking out of the blind side and I didn't see it. Well, if you catch me cold-cocked out of the blind side and I don't see it and you hit me in the head and I'm out, it's done. Cold-cocked ambush, nobody's doing anything about. That's why awareness is so important. Situational awareness should be habitual. Always be aware of what's in front of you and what's potentially behind you. All right, and anything that looks out the ordinary. So it doesn't matter what skill set you've got, what gun you carry or caliber of weapon you carry, where legality allows. If you don't see it coming, you can't deal with it. Agreed?
Agreed.
No matter who you are, right? So waiting to be attacked in order to defend yourself is borderline stupid, because if you're defending, you're fucking losing. Dennis Martin used to say, defending is the art of losing slowly. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Right. So majority of self-defense is depicted around, okay, guy does this, and now you do A, B, and C to fix the problem. Well, that's the sort of bloke that's never fucking been there.
Yep.
Because particularly if he's teaching something complicated, because the first thing he's not said to you is how the fuck you'll feel when you're suddenly taken by surprise, when your arsehole goes like a manhole, where you suddenly go from cognitive to absolutely non-cognitive. You are completely midbrain. You are left with the limbic brain, the fucking intelligence of a dog, and you are completely shocked. And out of that, you're going to turn into fucking Bruce Lee, are you? Mm-hmm. Well, all I would say is good luck with that. So, but basically, you've got an offensive, proactive dynamic where it's me, more, and me, finished. Or you've got counter-offensive dynamic where I've missed something, you've grabbed me, or you've hit me first, or you've slammed me into the wall, or you've tackled me and now you're in the mount, or you've fucking somehow managed to triangulate me with 2 people or 3 people and I didn't see it, or you've put a blade to my throat. Now, I'm not saying that can't happen. Of course it can happen, even monkeys fall out of trees, but my question to you is, how if, let's say the lesson starts with, okay, guy's got a knife to your throat. Now we're going to clear the line, do this, and this. My first question would be, how the fuck did you get close enough to me to put a knife to my throat? It's not fucking Star Trek. You didn't just materialize. There was a beginning, the middle, and an end. The beginning was you looking at me and summing up whether or not I fit your victim criteria. The second element was you now moving towards me with purposeful intent. My question would be, where the fuck was your attention to the environment while those two things were going on? So if you just suddenly got to me and put the knife to my throat, I was clearly in condition white and switched off. So the majority of methods of self-defense, including some of the big names out there, are teaching from the perspective of, okay, you're switched off because you're not capable of having any awareness, and the guy's going to take you by surprise, and now you're going to turn into Wonder Man. I mean, it's just bollocks. Yeah. So counter-offense basically is, you've done something to me, maybe I said, Korama, you threw a shot, it's glancing, it's caught my chin, I'm rattled, but I'm not out. I'm going to cover, crash in, and now I'm going to take you apart. So that is counter-offense. So that would mean you went first, followed by a fuck you, me, finished. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really, I love that way of looking at it, because it's been one of my big...
Whereas this self-defense dynamic, the self-defense as it's taught is, you've been attacked. So he went first, then he went again, and again, and again, and now you're fucked.
Yep.
So that's the dynamic. So let me give you that once more. Offensive dynamic is preemptive, offensive continuous attack, blitzkrieg. Me, more of me, finished. All right? You're about to fight before you even knew you were in it. That is what's proven to have the highest probability of success. And look through your history. That's not me that's come to that. I've come to similar conclusions to many before me, bigger and better.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what works. It's just what works. But you've got to have a contingency plan, because you can't always be switched on. So what if you grab me, slam into the wall? What if you hit me first? What if you take me down? Well, that's our counter-offense dynamic, which of course we train. And that, in the context of what I just said, would be you, fuck you, me, finished. Whereas the terminology of self-defense is you, I'm fucked, it's over. So, how you use language is really, really important. So I'm a master NLP practitioner. I'm well into the linguistics of this. And when I went and learned NLP, I realized that I was actually doing a lot of this stuff naturally, but didn't know why. So I managed to identify it. And because I identified it, I made what I do better. That's why I can articulate it back to you now, clearly, you knowing what I'm talking about. And basically, if you have a good understanding of these three elements of self-protection, and overall as a whole, you're going to be efficient. So it'll be based around street smarts initially, learning to see it early so you can avoid it. Get your OODA loop tight, small, condensed. Small OODA loop is faster moving, therefore faster reacting. That's the difference between trained and untrained. If I had the best self-protection of all, don't fucking be there. All consequences of violence are negative, all of them. If I do what's necessary to get home in one piece and I'm accosted by 3 people in an alley, nothing good's coming out of that. I'm going to take 3 people apart, or they're going to hurt me, or I'm going to end up in court with a heavy fine, or I'm going to end up in prison, or I'm going to see them 6 months down the line when I'm out with my wife and they got 3 of their friends. Now I've got to come back. Mm-hmm. None of it is good. The best of all is don't be there. I mean, Kelly summed it up best. If you end up in an altercation and you have to fight, the very best probability is that you walk away relatively unscathed and not in custody.
Mm.
Well, these days that's not a likelihood, is it? So, but if not, and I'm called an animal, mate, I'll steal your fucking face. Simple as that. I'll wipe your bloodline clean. That's the way I think.
I actually just had an hour and a half conversation with Mark McYoung about that very topic, about the cost of violence.
Oh, yeah.
It's something
he doesn't like me very much, I don't think.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I don't think he does.
That's right.
I like painting Quid. He's a real eccentric dude.
He's one I'd love to talk to as well. But I'd like to know, just as we draw towards the end of the normal interview, I just want to find out what's your vision for the future with Urban Combatives. I mean, you started off with humble beginnings, not really intending to even teach, and now you've got a global brand. You've got instructors all over the planet.
Oh yeah, let me tell you about it. Let me just say that was something about. First off, right, nobody's more surprised than me. It wasn't at an intentional plan of action. And the simple reason for that is I've come from very, very humble beginnings. You know, you have such a thing as what's called a financial thermostat. And what's stuck on you at an early age, particularly if you're from where I'm from, is, you know, people like us don't have money. Money don't grow on trees. Money's the root of all evil, etc., etc. So I never ever bothered about money, and I've never been a materialistic person. I'm a fucking live now for now person. And when I started to realise, literally over the last 3 years, how UC's been a brand for a long time, at least 10 years, but for the last 3 years, how everything's just exploded. I mean, like there's 53 UC study groups and school outlets all over the world. I've taught UC in over 40 countries. I mean, it's everywhere. It's just amazing. I can't believe what's happened. And I'm really, really proud to know the fact that I did it, because, you know, I never thought it plausible to achieve so much. But where I believe it really is all about, I have a lot of particularly younger guys who have done this with me for a long time, who kind of see me as a bit of a dad, I suppose. And it really helped a lot of them, you know. It's really put a lot of good people that had a potentially bad path on a good path. So I think the reason, if there's serendipity to it, is that I'm designed to do this to help people do that. And where UC is actually going now is going, I mean, I believe in moving with the times. I believe in looking honestly at the current threat. And if you look honestly at the current threat, which is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, you are highly likely, potentially in most cities now, looking at dealing with multiple armed threat. You've got Somalian gangs fighting in the fucking street outside of Primark with machetes, and no one's talking about it. I mean, what the fuck's going on? You know, we are massively changing in terms of threat. So now anything only for anything trivial, you know, you could be facing somebody obviously with a weapon, but more than one potentially with a weapon. And we've always known that always expect a weapon and always expect more than one assailant. But what you're seeing now is you're seeing fucking multiple armed assailants in the street. And, you know, I don't know of any skill set unarmed that's going to allow the majority of people to deal with that, let alone a woman. So my Combatives has taken a shift. I now run a program called Tier 1 Civilian. And Tier 1 Civilian is, so they're using the analogy of Tier 1. If you're Tier 1 at anything, you are the best of the best. So I've worked with many special forces units, and several of which are Tier 1 who I won't name. But if you are Tier 1, you are the top of the top. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's use the analogy of Tier 1 to a civilian. Just to a civilian combative self-protection trainee, right? How do you be the best that you could be? Well, you need more than one discipline. So the majority of people are just relatively street smart and have good unarmed skills. You need to be exceptionally street smart, and you need exceptional unarmed skills. And you need to learn how to use weapons. You need to know how to use a blade or point and edge tool offensively extremely well. None of the flowery shit, just well. You need to know how to use an impact weapon. You need to know how to use any improvised weapon of opportunity. And if you've got the opportunity, you need to learn how to shoot. You also want to learn tactical medical care, tactical casualty medical care, emergency medicine, how to stop massive bleeding, etc., stuff like that. You want to learn how to drive offensively and defensively like your fucking life depended on it. And you want to become urban smart and also potentially bushcraft smart. I believe that you need an array of skills if you are going to have any possibility of dealing with modern enemy and with what I believe is to come. So Tier 1 civilian, I mean, obviously when I teach guys in America, they use unarmed skills just as a bridge if they're caught without a firearm that day. Well, you know, most of them wouldn't be caught without their firearm. But it's like the old Fairbairn adage, you know, unarmed skills are for those foolish enough to be caught without a weapon, and you only use them until you get your hands on one.
Yeah.
So that's my whole thing. What we started this conversation with was the disparity in threat caused by disproportionate armament. You know, criminals in this country can fucking carry whatever they want and will do, no matter what. And if they're of a certain ethnic origin, they're actually fucking protected and we're persecuted, which gives them massive weight. Whereas we arm ourselves with so much of a 4-inch folding knives that actually locks out. You're going to prison for 5 years, mate.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You've got these ridiculous laws. I mean, the things that they're coming out with the knife situation. Nobody's more uptight about the knife situation in the UK than me. My heart goes out to all of those parents. But look at what they're saying. They're saying, nobody has a reason to be caught with a knife ever on the street. If they are, 5 years in prison, and if they ever use it, 25 years. Well, why am I not seeing that with the criminal?
Mm-hmm.
You're not seeing that with the criminal. You get this thing called a TIC taken into consideration. Oh, we've got you on the drugs charge and we've got you on the assault, so we drop the knife carry. You know, it doesn't apply, so it's all fucked up. And so basically they're taking away your God-given right to arm yourselves against people that will harm and hurt you. You know, and so you've got no protection. And then we know that the police are not going to be there when you need them. And then there's the clause, well, even if the police were actually there when you needed them, they're not under any real massive legal obligation to jump in and help you if it puts them at jeopardy. In which case, you're on your fucking own, Jack. So, you know, I just think it's wrong. So I plan to move out of the UK where the laws will be somewhat more understood and respected. I mean, they're saying send all knives that come out for cutlery or kitchenware now should be rounded off at the tip so they can cause less damage. What page are these people on, really? You know.
Can I just tell you, I went through a self-serve checkout at a supermarket a couple of weeks ago, and I bought some plastic, like disposable knives, like for a barbecue. Yeah. And I had to wait there until the staffman became verified I was over the age of 18 so I could purchase the knife. There's a plastic, like the damn thing can barely cut a sausage when I want it to, let alone stab somebody with it.
Yeah, but Australia has exactly the same laws as the UK, doesn't it, in that regard?
It does, and I blame the UK for that. But
I mean, they're not even allowed to carry pepper spray, for fuck's sake. I believe every woman should carry pepper spray.
100%.
So really, that's contradictory because pepper spray is a less than lethal alternative for chemical irritant that is carried by police, right, as a less than lethal alternative to a firearm. And yet, a woman is not allowed to carry that. So if a woman's not allowed to carry pepper spray, and the current MO that you're seeing in Europe is like 3 to 5 men of a variety of origins, let's say, gang raping 1 or 2 women at knife point. Now, you tell me of an unarmed skill set that you know of that's going to allow any woman, even with the right mindset, to deal with that.
No, there isn't one.
There is a need. There is a need to learn how to use weapons. There is a need to employ weapons. We need to equal the disparity between us. And the only thing that we're left with doing is something improvised or a tool of opportunity. And of course, even then, everything has to meet the criteria, of course, as to why you did what you did. But the bottom line is we've just been left defenseless. And I mean, God forbid if we ever go to war again. Do you know what I mean? I mean, in 1939, when all men over the age of 18 were called up, they went. I mean, what have you got going now? You know, people confused about their gender, all sorts, on and on. You know what I mean? It just winds me up, really. We are just defenseless. Now you've got, when I was 10 years old, we were climbing trees, snagging our clothes, getting dirty in the mud, robbing fags from shops, fighting rival gangs. Now you've got a 10-year-old boy showing women how to apply makeup on a tutorial on Facebook better than a woman can. I mean, what the fuck's going on?
It's a different world.
If I say that out loud, I'm the bigot. Really? I don't get it, brother. I really don't. But it is what it is. All you can do is defend your corner. Yeah, really.
That's it, mate. All right, mate. We'll wrap up the normal part of the interview there. We'll do the bonus round in a minute for the Patreon subscribers. But for those that are leaving us now, if people want to know more about you, they want to book you for a seminar, they want to buy your products, where can they go?
Just go to they've got a main website, www.urbancombatives.com. We've got a huge YouTube channel, over 100 clips there on there free, so it's a good free resource to make sure that it's what you want. I would say look at the YouTube stuff, make sure it's what you want first, and then if you want to go further from there, go to the website.
Awesome. All right, Lee, thank you very much for joining us, mate, and I look forward to doing it again. I had a great time listening to you. Man, Lee is an intense dude, and I really enjoyed that conversation. what you see is what you get with Mr. Morrison, and I'm so grateful for him taking the time to have a chat with us. And if you'd like to listen to a whole lot of bonus content, 24 minutes of bonus content with Lee, head over to patreon.com/managing violence. Make sure you check us out on all the social media. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Until next time, I am Joe Saunders. This is the Managing Violence Podcast, and I'll see you next time.